All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
It's great to be back.
Today, we're going to be looking at some seriously fascinating folklore.
Oh, yeah.
Creatures from Philippine mythology.
I love this stuff.
You probably heard of some of these, but we're going way beyond surface level.
Right.
We're talking Aswang,
Yeah.
Manananggal, Tikbalang,
Okay.
and Tiyanak, and what they tell us about Filipino culture and maybe even our own fears.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, these creatures, they are terrifying, but they also offer a window into a culture's values, anxiety.
Exactly.
They're not just monster stories.
No.
They're like cultural puzzles, each piece reflecting a specific aspect of Filipino society.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Aswang. Now, most people know this is like the shapeshifter, right?
All right.
Normal person by day, monstrous hunter by night.
Yeah.
But what makes it especially creepy is this idea of it hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. It plays on that universal fear of the other.
Right.
But in a very specific way.
Yeah.
You know, in Filipino society where these close-knit communities are so important, the Aswang represents the fear of someone you trust,
Right.
someone you know turning into a threat.
Oh, absolutely. And that fear is amplified by the Aswang's preference for pregnant women as victims.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
What do you think that tells us about the culture's anxieties?
Well, in a society where family and lineage are so central, the Aswang preying on pregnant women represents a threat to the very continuation of the family line.
Right.
It also taps into fears surrounding childbirth,
Right.
which historically has been a risky and vulnerable time for women.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting that garlic and salt are believed to ward off the Aswang.
Oh, that's right.
Just like garlic repels vampires in Western folklore.
Yeah. It shows how certain fears transcend cultures, right?
Yeah.
Manifesting in different forms, but tapping into that same primal fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Methods of protection may vary,
Right.
but the underlying anxiety is universal.
It is so... The Aswang preys on the vulnerable from within the community. But our next creature, the Manananggal, this one takes that vulnerability to a whole other level.
Oh, yeah.
This one is straight out of a nightmare.
The Manananggal, it takes that classic vampire myth and cranks up the horror.
For sure.
But instead of like a suave count,
Right.
we have a woman who literally splits in half at night.
It's so crazy.
The top half sprouting bat wings and a long blood-sucking tongue.
Oh, it's terrifying. Yeah, this one is definitely more visceral than the Aswang.
For sure.
And like the Aswang, it preys on pregnant women.
Yeah.
But its method is far more gruesome.
But
Imagine being asleep and this creature descends upon you.
it's a terrifying image, and its choice of victims
It's awful.
reinforces the idea of the Manananggal as a threat to family and lineage. But some scholars suggest that the Manananggal, with its monstrous transformation
Right.
and association with blood,
Right.
might also symbolize anxieties around female power and sexuality.
That's interesting. There's also that fascinating detail about sprinkling salt or garlic on the Manananggal's lower half. Oh, yeah? To prevent it from reattaching.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
You know, that's a great question for the listeners out there.
Yeah.
What do you think it symbolizes? On one hand, it might represent the desire to control this terrifying force, to find a way to fight back against something so seemingly unstoppable.
Right.
But it could also be interpreted as a way of controlling or suppressing what the Manananggal represents.
Oh, interesting.
Perhaps anxieties around female power or anything that deviates from societal norms.
So we've got these two creatures that prey on the vulnerable, but now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the Tikbalang. It's still unsettling, but in a more mischievous way.
Yeah.
Think less direct harm and more about disrupting your journey and messing with your mind.
The Tikbalang, the trickster of Philippine mythology.
Yes.
Half man, half horse.
Right.
Lurking in the depths of the jungle, waiting to lead travelers astray.
Still less about physical harm and more about psychological manipulation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It embodies that sense of unease and disorientation you might feel when venturing into the unknown.
Right. The Tikbalang could be seen as a personification of nature's unpredictable and sometimes dangerous power.
Yeah.
It reminds us that venturing into the wilderness can be disorienting and that respecting nature's forces is paramount.
Absolutely. And to add a touch of whimsy to this whole thing,
Please.
there's this belief that if you find yourself lost in the jungle, you can break the Tikbalang spell by turning your shirt inside out.
Oh.
Would you try that if you were lost?
You know, it's a great example of folk beliefs providing a sense of agency in the face of the unknown. Whether it actually works is debatable, of course, but the belief itself speaks volumes.
I love that it's also fascinating how the Tikbalang, unlike the Aswang or Manananggal, remains incredibly popular in contemporary Filipino culture,
It does.
appearing in horror movies,
Oh, yeah?
even inspiring modern art.
Why do you think that is?
I think the Tikbalang, with its connection to the natural world
Yeah.
and its trickster nature,
Yeah.
taps into something primal and enduring,
For sure.
and speaks to our fascination with the unexplained, our fear of the unknown,
Right.
and perhaps our own mischievous tendencies.
So, from the community threat of the Aswang to the visceral horror of the Manananggal, and now to the trickster energy of the Tikbalang, we see a range of anxieties and cultural values reflected in these creatures. Ready to delve into our final creature for today,
Oh yeah, let's do it.
the Tianak.
Okay.
This one, I think, taps into something deeply unsettling about our relationship with the familiar.
The Tianak truly embodies the concept of the uncanny,
Mm-hmm.
the familiar becoming strange and horrifying.
Yeah.
It preys on our empathy,
Right.
turning our compassion against us.
That's what makes it so chilling.
Yeah.
You hear the cries of a seemingly helpless baby in the forest.
Bye.
Your instinct is to help, and then bam, it transforms into this monstrous creature with sharp claws and teeth.
Oh, it's so creepy.
That fear that what seems innocent can be the most dangerous. Have you ever encountered that idea in other stories, maybe even beyond mythology?
Oh, it's a universal theme.
It is.
We see it in fairy tales and horror movies, even in real-life situations.
Absolutely.
The Tianak just takes that fear and amplifies it, turning it into a literal monster.
Right.
But there's another layer to this creature
Okay.
that adds a whole other dimension of complexity.
You're talking about the belief that TNX are the spirits of unbaptized babies, right? That adds a layer of tragedy and pathos to the myth.
Yeah.
It's not just a monster.
Right.
It's a lost soul, a life unfulfilled.
And that belief raises some interesting questions about cultural attitudes towards life, death, and the afterlife.
For sure.
What happens to those who are denied certain rituals?
Right.
Or who die before fulfilling certain societal expectations?
So the Tianak isn't just a scary monster. It's a reflection of anxieties about life, death, and what might lie beyond.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how these creatures, while terrifying, also serve as these cautionary figures.
Right.
They teach us about boundaries, respect for tradition, and the consequences of straying from the accepted path.
Yeah.
The Aswang embodies the dangers lurking within the community. The Manananggal, the anxieties surrounding female power.
Right.
And the Tianak, the importance of rituals and the consequences of their absence.
It's like they're embodiments of these cultural taboos, reminding people of the dangers that lurk if you step outside the lines.
Exactly.
But you know what I find interesting is that there's also this element of empowerment embedded in these myths. The idea that even in the face of these terrifying creatures, there are ways to protect yourself to fight back. Like using garlic and salt against the Aswang and Manananggal, or turning your shirt inside out to confuse the Tikbalang.
Absolutely. These folk beliefs offer a sense of agency in a world that can often feel unpredictable and dangerous. It's like having a secret weapon against the supernatural.
Yeah.
A little bit of knowledge, a sprinkle of garlic, and suddenly you're not completely helpless.
Right. It's almost like a psychological coping mechanism woven into the very fabric of the culture.
I like that.
But it's not just about practical defenses, is it?
No.
These myths also seem to tap into a deeper human need to understand the world around us, to explain the unexplainable.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
Myths and folklore often arise from a desire to make sense of the universe.
Right.
To grapple with existential questions about life, death, and the forces that shape our destiny. These creatures, as frightening as they might be, offer a way to process those anxieties, to give shape to the formless fears that lurk in the shadows of our minds.
So by creating these elaborate stories, these monstrous beings, people were actually trying to gain some control over their fears to make the unknown a little less terrifying.
Precisely by giving a face, a name, a set of behaviors, to these abstract anxieties, they become less overwhelming.
Yeah.
More manageable.
Yeah.
It's a way of saying, yes, there are dangers out there.
Right.
But we know what they are, and we have ways to protect ourselves.
And what's really fascinating is how these myths continue to evolve.
How do you do?
Finding new life in modern media.
Yeah.
We mentioned the Tikbalang appearing in contemporary horror films.
Oh, yeah.
It's like these creatures are refusing to be relegated to the dusty pages of ancient texts.
It speaks to their enduring power.
Right.
They tap into something primal, something that resonates across generations. And in a way, it makes sense.
Yeah.
The fears and anxieties that gave birth to these myths haven't really disappeared.
Right.
We still grapple with the unknown, with the fragility of life, with the forces beyond our control.
So even though we live in a world of science and technology, we're still drawn to these ancient stories because they reflect something fundamental about the human experience.
Absolutely.
Something that transcends time and culture.
It does.
We may no longer believe in the literal existence of Aswangs or Mananangals,
Right.
but the anxieties they represent, the need to make sense of the world, the desire to protect ourselves from harm.
Yeah.
These are all still very much alive in us today.
Absolutely. And by exploring these myths, by understanding the cultural context from which they arose, we gain a deeper understanding not only of the Philippines and its rich folklore, but also of ourselves and the universal fears and desires that connect us all.
Absolutely.
It's like holding up a mirror to both the past and the present, seeing reflections of ourselves in the eyes of these mythical creatures.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the age of information, the power of storytelling and the allure of the unknown remain as potent as ever.
They really do.
But for now, let's shift our focus and consider something closer to home.
Okay.
What about the creatures from your own culture? What stories from your childhood or your community have shaped your understanding of the world?
Every culture has its own set of myths and legends that reflect its unique history, values, and anxieties.
Right.
Take some time to think about the creatures and stories that have resonated with you throughout your life. What do they reveal about your own cultural landscape?
It's pretty amazing how these creatures from Philippine mythology, as frightening as they are, also offer like a glimpse into the heart of a culture.
Yeah.
We've seen how they embody anxieties around community, family, the power of nature.
Right.
But more than that, they remind us of this like human need to explain the unexplainable, you know, to find meaning in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable.
Exactly. Each creature carries a message, a warning or a piece of cultural wisdom kind of woven into its very essence.
Right. The Aswang lurking within the community reminds us to be wary of those who might betray our trust.
Right.
The Manananggal, with its gruesome transformation, reflects anxieties around female power and the fear of the unknown. And the Tikbalang, the trickster, teaches us to respect the power and unpredictability of the natural world.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're not always in control.
Right.
And sometimes the best way to navigate the unknown is to adapt and find a way to outsmart the challenges we face.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the Tiyanak.
Right.
Perhaps the most unsettling of them all.
You're sure.
It preys on our empathy, exploiting our desire to help and protect.
It does.
It's a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving.
Right.
And that even the most innocent-seeming things can hold hidden dangers.
Yeah. It's like each creature is a puzzle piece, and when you put them all together, you get this like more complete picture of Filipino culture.
Yeah.
Its values, its fears, and its enduring fascination with the supernatural.
These myths, passed down through generations, serve as a kind of cultural compass.
Right.
Guiding people through life's challenges, offering explanations for the unexplainable, and providing a framework for understanding their place in the cosmos.
And as we've seen these stories continue to resonate with us today, even if we live in a world that's vastly different from the one in which they were born,
For sure.
they tap into something fundamental about the human experience.
They do.
Our need to make sense of the world, to grapple with our fears, and to find meaning in the face of uncertainty.
So as we conclude our deep dive into Philippine mythology, I encourage you to keep exploring the world of myths and legends.
Yeah.
Look beyond the surface of these stories and consider what they reveal about the cultures that created them and about ourselves.
What creatures from your own background resonate with you? What stories have shaped your understanding of the world? Keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of exploration alive.
That's it.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.